Hey, I'm CJ Miller. I'm in Shreveport, Louisiana. Across the Red River is beautiful Bossier City, Louisiana. Come check us out. Lots of fun things to do. We just think today and tomorrow is going to be the end of our Mardi Gras season. But, here's something nobody's asked for. There you go, an original composition. Yeah, I've been playing this thing for years. I still haven't gotten like the hang of it, but how much fun, It's coming with me on my trip. I am packing, taking a break from the packing. I'm going to go to Miami, and I leave tomorrow morning. I'm there by the day after tomorrow, and I get one night to play around Miami, and then I go for my cruise. It's a 3 day, or I'm sorry, well, either way, it's a 3 week cruise. And what I did was I booked back to back 3 day, 4 day, 3 day, 4 day, 3 day, 4 day. So 3 weeks. And it's all on Carnival Conquest. And so by the end of it, I will be very familiar with Carnival Conquest. I'm already feeling familiar because it's in the same class of ship as the Carnival Valor, which is I went on last year with my friend Jay. And that was my first time on a Carnival cruise, and I feel like I'm going to be know more about it and everything. So I'll post some videos from there, but it's just going to be really, really fun. It's basically just me getting away from a lot of I didn't even realize I needed it at the time when I booked it. I started booking before I even took the other cruise. I was set to take a cruise with Jay and our friend Michelle, and we went for like 5 days out of New Orleans on Carnival Valor. But before I went, I knew Tic Tacs, right? I knew that I was going to like it because I'd watched some videos on YouTube, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to have fun with it. So I started. As soon as I had that cruise paid for in advance, I started making advance payments on other cruises. And it was initially going to be a 4 day cruise out of Miami that my friend Mike was going to come on with me. And he decided that it's not for him at this time anyway. And so, so yeah, that's okay. I booked it, and then decided, okay, well, there's another cruise right after that, and it was like a 3 day cruise, but it was like twice as much, almost for the cruise that I booked. But after that 3 day cruise was another 4 day cruise, and that was a viable price. So I booked that one, and I figured I'll take a 4 day cruise, and then I'll have 4 days off in which I could like play around Miami. I used to live there, and to catch up and visit and stuff like that. I think I'm not at a desk. I'm at a keyboard, so that's why everything's a little jacked up. But what I'm doing is putting change together. I don't want to forget this either. We have here in Shreveport, we have a free city transit system. Like it's free for me to get around by the bus, And in Miami-Dade, it's not like that. They have a public transit system that is comprised of 2 or 3 different systems, and some of them will move you about once you're inside. There's something called a people mover from the and then what that does is that kind of moves you around the large government center. And it is, it's almost as large as a small town, you know, and that's fine. That'll move you like from the airport to the government, that kind of stuff. It'll move you around there, uh, and will connect you to uh, what do they call this thing? Metro Rail, maybe, or something. I forget what it's called, but it's their typical public transit thing or whatever. It's an average $3. I think $3 for the day pass. So I definitely want to take my change with me. I don't want to forget that, because that'll help me navigate that system. Um, Little bitty things that we think about when we take for granted at home, that when we travel, it may be different. And one of the things is that if you plan on going around, uh, uh, if you are going to be taking Ubers and cabs and stuff like that, and you're in a large metropolitan area, say Dallas, New York, LA, Miami, any of those places, um, it's very expensive to take an Uber. And you're not just going through the neighborhood. Like if I were to come uh, by Uber or Lyft from my store, my nearest store, which is a Brookshire's, and then take it back here, it'd be all of like $16 for the trip, which is not something that I enjoy spending, and I try not to. I try to go with friends when they go, and then, it's like, hey, if you help me out here, I'll help you out there, that kind of stuff, but it's like, yeah, I try not to really pay that kind of money uh, just for regular getting about, and I really try to take city buses. Um, and so uh, think about that when I'm traveling, and that's my advice to anyone who travels. Think about how you're going to get about once you're there. What's it going to cost if you're going to take cabs, or if you're going to do the bus system or whatever. Uh, Fortunately, I'm fortunate because when I was wilder and a bit more impetuous than I am now, I used to live in Miami. My history with Miami is this. Some of you guys my age, you might remember the early days of America Online, AOL. And that was, uh, you know, up until AOL, people did have some internet in their homes. The more affluent people that could afford a home computer, and they could afford some connectivity and this and that and everything. But they came out with a connected, I think it was like Windows, made it really easy. And AOL, they kind of hit around the same time. It just really got like awesome to use. It's like, wow, this is this is basically flipping through a picture book on your screen, basically. Uh, up until then, it was just me writing writing songs and poetry and putting it on my family's computer. It wasn't even my computer or my family. I was living in a caretaker for my sister's children while my sister and her husband were at work. Not to say that I was a great caretaker, but I did my best. But anyway, that was my role in that situation, and so America Online became the big thing. And my theater friend, oh my God, what was her name? Uh, Tina. Her name was Tina. She introduced me to AOL through a home computer, and so yeah, and then yeah. So anyway, we got introduced to AOL. But so happened with AOL, it was new for everybody. And what do the first thing that people do? They reach out and try to make love connections, whatever. It's like, wow, hey, because AOL, it wasn't like I almost prefer it, the chat rooms and stuff like that. It's not like social media now. I don't like Facebook. People go there just to dump political. I'm sure there's more going on there now, but at some point, Facebook got like very political, very spiritual. You're a sinner if you do this and this and that, and it's just uh, I will say the morality of it is a little more preferable than early AOL because you didn't know what you were going to get sent. So it was just wild, wild west in the internet in those early days of America Online. But it was user friendly, and we all got, just everybody, just collectively, we got, uh, uh, we became computer literate. Those of us who had a little bit of computer literacy, it kind of grew. And yeah, and oh, it was awful. You could be like in a chat room with someone and they could irritate you, and then somebody might have a program called a punter, and then they could like punch you and kick you offline. And that was irritable because this was dial up. You'd have to do it. It was like $19 a month. And it would just, and it would take like maybe sometimes 10, 15 minutes to get a connection, you know. And while you were doing it, it was through your phone, and you couldn't use your telephone while you were using the internet. It was wild. Um, you know, even if you had like an in-home party line, you couldn't do it. So anyway, um, but yeah, I met this guy, Dan Dravick. I have no idea whatever happened to him. We chatted. We chatted, chat room. Yeah, we talked each other up. And I was just finishing my tenure with the Wandering Minstrel Theaters, and I don't know. I connected with this guy. We really did. It was his first lesson of just meeting someone, chatting with them, and I mean, I went so far as to send him a picture, an old, like I cut out an old photo of an old ID that I had and everything like that. It wasn't old. I mean, it looked like me. Uh, and I was maybe 27 at the time, so I was still youngish and all this. And uh, well, he insisted that he was going to pay for me to come out and see him, and he lived in Miami, in an area of town called Morningside. And I went to visit him, and it did not work out. We did not fall in love. I'll tell you what happened. Culture shock for me. A combination of just, I really wanted to impress this guy. And I was just terrified that whatever I said, it was going to be the wrong thing. And he was pushing, he was like, hey, show me some personality, this and that, and everything like that. And it wasn't going to work out. But also, there was a complication. He had an ex-boyfriend, and his ex-boyfriend still lived with him. It was like, this is not something that I'm feeling groovy about. There was a template for it. It could have worked. My friend Helen, she was divorced from her husband, Robert, but they lived together as housemates, and they were raising their children together. But they were divorced. But they just, they decided they enjoyed each other's friendship. So, so maybe they were doing something along that line. It could happen. But for me, and that is an example of how you can live together with an ex and be a roommate, and they, dated other people and everything like that. But as near as I can tell, they're still, cohabitating and everything. It just, I don't know what happened with me and Dan. I went for the weekend. I was grateful, but I remember looking out of the bay window in his apartment. And I sat and looked at it all night long. I sat up and looked and watched the sunrise over the bay in the distance. And I fell in love with the sunrise. Fell in love with the sunrise. I'd never seen anything so naturally moving in my entire life. And, I mean, I'm a natural fire element. I love staring into a campfire, and just watching it and just losing myself into that. But it turns out that, the sun is fire, and it comes up over water. And, yeah, just, wow. You can find beauty in nature anywhere. Anyway, that was what happened. We went to, let's see, we visited, first night I stayed there. We went to this bar called Cactus and got a little blah blah blah. And it's like, you know what? I almost like personality wise, I almost got along with his boyfriend, whose name was Ramey. Remember that because I had an uncle Ramey, so I remember his name was Ramey, but it was not. Yeah, he wasn't my type physically. Whereas Dan was definitely my type, but uh, I don't know. You get to, it just the connection just wasn't there, and I wanted it to be there. And I feel like he did too. I really wanted it to be there. But anyway, uh, one thing that happens with me is I tend to have a strong personality. I really do. I tend to be, and I think most people look at me initially, and I come on kind of shy at first initially, but once I get going, I'm kind of like, I like to kind of, I kind of like to steer the situation. Hey, let's go here, let's go there, let's go, and that can be off-putting. It's weird because the first thing that people think is, okay, here's this nice little passive guy. He's probably a nice guy, and I am a nice guy, but I also have my own ideas and my own identity and my own things that I like to do, and yeah, uh, so who, I can't blame anyone for if they want, you know, someone to come in and follow the leader if they want to kind of lead things or whatever. And it's like, that's, whatever. But it's less of an ego thing, and it's just more of my personality. I'm not like, hey, I got to control things or whatever. But I don't know. But, yeah, whatever. But anyway, in this case, uh, I was kind of doing the opposite, and I was kind of letting Dan kind of set up and do what he wanted to do. And I think I don't know. I think if I'd have been a little bit more, but you can't really help it. If the spark's not there, the spark's not there. And if we lived if we were acquaintances and everything like that, But yeah, he had a housemate, a former ex, who was kind of a. If you don't mind me saying so, he was just kind of a layabout. Like he had no like money to speak of. He had no way to support himself, and and these were the days these were the days of wine and roses, so to speak. We were all a little bit crazy back then. Long story short, and I do think fondly of the connection that my very first internet connection that we made. I thought very fondly of that, and it worked out. I remember that Dan was working on a reality show before the term reality show, and it was a dating show. It was for something called Channel One. This is not Channel One releasing the gay, porno thing that was out in the 90s and 2000. It's not that Channel One releasing. This was just a Channel One in Miami, Florida, and I think it was a local station, like a that you would find on the UHF dial. Kids, if you don't know UHF, you're just going to have to Google it. I'm not going to explain it here. But anyway, so UHF. So I think it was something like that, like a different frequency. Yeah. So anyway, but he was working with something called Channel One, and he was trying to create a dating program. He was a visual editor, but he was working on this. He had this really, he had a goal, And anyway, yeah, of course I've peeked in on him over the years, and I don't even think he's still alive anymore. That's the thing. I don't know. He just suddenly dropped off the face of the earth. He's there. He's got a couple of productions. He's worked as editor on a couple of productions. He's only got a few credits, online, and then whatever happened, I don't know. But so I stayed the weekend, and then I came back to Shreveport. But in my mind, I loved Miami, and I was going to have to figure out a way to get back there. Well, things were not going great here. In my theater time, my time at the theater was winding up. Like I'd already left Wandering Minstrel, And what was I going to do next? As far, and I still had a hunger for theater. I don't know, but I was also working as a nanny for several families. So yeah, I'd go stay here, and I'd take care of their children. I'd go here, and I'd take care of their children. And the the family that I was uh, staying with, uh, and I was going to take care of, uh, help them run kind of a childcare out of the home for friends and family. And I was, that so you know, that was going to be interesting. And I went and I did that for a few weeks, but it turned out to be kind of like a temporary thing, and they decided not to do that, and so therefore there was no reason for me to be there. And so I decided, in that case, uh, let me just run down to New Orleans. I'm having to kind of readjust and refigure, and let me start everything. And New Orleans was always some place that I went to whenever I needed to start over. New Orleans used to be a place where I could go and start over, so I did that. Um, and and there began my career working in restaurants. I had, like, prior to that, I had one job in a restaurant at a Dairy Queen, and I think I worked there for uh, about a week. It was like, it really wasn't for me. Uh, Although, can't knock it, my sister worked for Dairy Queen simultaneously at Dairy Queen and building a medical career in a career in the medical field. And she's went on to do great things, and she's become my hero as far as that goes. But it wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. Mm. But I did find out that I have a knack for working in restaurants, back of the house and front of the house. Fast food is not something uh, that I'm good for. I'm not knocking it. I love to go and eat a good burger here and there, but yeah, it's just not. Yeah, working there is not for me. Um, and the very first job I got was in a place called La Madelines. I got hired there, was given the uniform, got hired on, signed on, was supposed to report that weekend, and the very next day I also got a job at a place called Bugsy's Bar and Grill on Convention Center Boulevard. And so I didn't need the job at La Madelines. So I ended up working. And that was where I found out, hey, I'm a really good server. And also, I love to go in the back of the kitchen and play around. And I love to, mix up a cocktail behind the bar. The bartenders did not like me serving and mixing and serving drinks because that was their money. And yeah, whatever. But it was fun. Um, However, uh, that job was a startup business, and it wasn't going to go anywhere. I ended up getting a job working shortly within a few months. I got some experience, and then I went to work at uh, Emeril Lagasse's Delmonico. He bought the historic Delmonico restaurant, which was from the Delmonico family that started in New York, and then he did it. He took it over. But it had been Delmonico's on St. Charles for the longest time, and before he got it, and he took it over. And then, of course, I think it actually closed down. Someone told me that Delmonico's closed down. That he had sold the restaurant and it closed down or something. I don't know, but you know, interestingly enough, the menu on Carnival Cruise is designed by Emeril Lagasse. In the the dining, the evening dining, and everything. So that's nice. Um, so um, oh, what? Yeah. So yeah. Long story short, I went and I stayed around. I spent about a year and a half in New Orleans, and I realized, I'm really in love with that sunrise that I saw in South Beach and looking out over Morningside and Miami. I didn't know the difference between South Beach and Miami and all this. I thought it was one big city. It's a bunch of individual little towns actually, but they're all in Miami-Dade County or whatever. But I was to learn all that when one day I just said, you know what, I'm going to Miami, and I took what savings that I had, and I bought a bus ticket, and I went to Miami, and I showed up with no money at all, literally. Uh, but I ended up after a couple of days floating around and figuring it. I ended up in Homestead, Florida, and I ended up getting that job at the White Lion Cafe that I talk about on this channel pretty frequently. And so, one of the things that I want to do is I want to visit my White Lion, uh, and I thought that I was going to be doing that if I had time. We'll see, we'll see. But anyway, because I was going to go to Miami and I was going to, you know, come up in the world, and then I was going to find. Dan Dravick, and I was going to show him, hey, I'm here. I wanted you to know. And it wasn't even for him. It was just I wanted to be a part of that. Well, I never did. I never did look him up. I never did find him or whatever. And I lived down there for 2.5, almost 3 years. Never did find him. And I mean, I knew the cactus, the place that he went to, or whatever. I don't know. It just turned out to be. I ended up working this job at White Lion Cafe, and to be honest with you, it was a fun job. I enjoyed it, but I worked day and night, and partnered up in a relationship. Like shortly after working there, I ended up meeting Bobby. Now, Bobby, it probably could have worked out, uh, but we were both insane, you know. And we weren't like physically abusive or anything like that, but we were neglectful of each other. And so that you can't thrive in that kind of situation. But I lived there for a couple of years uh, in Homestead, and then would take the bus into Miami, and I really didn't spend as much time in Miami as I wanted to because I was working a lot, and then I was having a lot of distance from my family. At some point, they thought maybe they didn't even know where I was. I think they were going to start the process because they hadn't heard from me in so long that they were going to start the process of maybe declaring me dead. Uh, It'd been about 6 months since I'd been in contact. Well, one day I rang at my mother, and my sister happened to be there, and that's what they told me. They were just like, they'd been worried, and they didn't know, and they were going to start at least looking around, and I think they were going to start that. I don't know. It was a close call. Thank God I'm not dead. Here I am. But and that was the last time I went like that long without being in touch with my family, and it was just I'd been in kind of a whirlwind. It took me a minute uh, to kind of come up and find my place. And I felt like I wanted to be kind of stable before I reached out, and, I don't know. I wasn't ready to come home at the time. And there really still wasn't a place for me, here yet. I was still trying to find my identity, my place. Who was I? And, all that. Uh, but I didn't have, because I was working this job, and I did love the job. I did love working it. It just took all of my time, and so I never did. I couldn't follow any other endeavors that I wanted to follow. I really couldn't look into community theater. I couldn't look into professional theater. I really didn't have a lot of playtime. My recreation at that time involved getting off work, getting together with some friends, and going to smoke out, and then going home, and then going to sleep. And because I was an absolute stoner. But um I was making it through, getting through, making it through, or whatever. But I didn't really. I don't know. It was a season, and I knew one day it was going to end, and so then I came home. But that was my history with Miami, and I think at one point I went back a few years later just for a couple of weeks, and it was like, oh my God, what do and I didn't know. I was just going there to blow off some steam, because this was right at the time that my mother was retiring, and I tried to move in with my mother, and I was going to be my mother's caretaker, and this and that. And she seemed like she thought it was a good idea, and I seemed like I thought it was a good idea to me. Seemed like it was to her, And we had really, really good intentions, and then we found out as adult people, she's very used to living alone, and you know, I'm very used to like at this point making my own goals and agendas and everything like that. And they just did not go together at all. And we just, we loved each other, my mother and I, always have, always, but we just could not live together without just really annoying each other. It was, I don't know. It was really kind of my first time. It wasn't my first time having like my own place, but it was always like a room rental here or that you know what I mean. But it was my first time having my own place and then trying to take care of somebody, and yeah, and she had her sense of independence and territory also, and it was just, I don't know, but that was probably one of the worst times in my life. My mother and I just constantly just nagging and fighting with each other, and just really making each other unhappy. And we love each other. And I hate that we couldn't be, roommates. Roommates are different. It's a different relationship than anything else, housemates or whatever. And you really have to be able to get along with whomever you live with. And it also really needs to be, I found out, I've had quite a few roommates over the years, and I found out that the success that I had with being a roommate with a guy named Isaiah here in Shreveport was because the apartment that we were renting was big enough that we weren't sitting on top of each other's space. You know what I mean? I had my own little area or whatever, and it was kind of cool. It really worked. I hardly ever interacted with him for long periods of time. He had his own space and his face, and I had my own little place up in the front, and that really worked. It was big enough that we could spread out, but which is much different than being a roommate and you're trying to share like a one room apartment, or maybe there's two bedrooms or something like that, and your bed is small and you're just hearing each other through the walls and you're getting on each other's nerves, and you need to have some sort of you need to have a sense, if you're going to have a roommate, a housemate, or whatever, you really need a sense of you need a place for privacy. And I think that's one of the reasons why sober living houses have such a massive turnover. One of the things is most people in a sober living house, they end up being two people to a room a lot of places, and if you try to do that long term, that really gets annoying. You really, and I think if they would change the model and more, and they are, but I think more of the sober living kind of situation, if you're going to do it, if each person needs to have their own individual room, and then, but I think, I don't know if it's a whole different topic, that I have no idea what I'm talking about. But anyway, that's my history of Miami. So my mother and I, we didn't get along, and she decided to go live and annoy her mother, and I felt such disappointment in myself for not being able to be the caregiver that I felt that my mother needed, but also relief at the same time. And I really wasn't happy in my call center job, which was it's on the account, but it was a particular account that I was working, which was it's not even, I don't even think it's around anymore. Sprint Mobile, do they? I don't think they're around anymore either. I don't know. But yeah. I'm not eating Tic Tacs like they're candy. It's dinner. I mean, Tic Tacs for dinner, like a supermodel. Okay, anyway. Doesn't it show? Dun, dun, dun. Anyway. Um, okay. So I went to Miami for a couple of weeks and then came back home. But well, this video is about to end. I'm going to say love and light. And if I don't make any more videos, I will video you and text and post from Miami or on the way to Miami. Love and light. Good night.